I don't know how to put this. Something bad just happened, and something awful. Ed is dead. Ed is supposed to be dead. I think. I'm not really sure. All I know is that I saw his burnt body making an exit out of this shack. Somehow. I'm writing this in the case that I wasn't hallucinating. If I have to get in trouble, so be it. This is way too much. The bottle is gone. I smashed it out of the shack and set the remains of that fucking poison on fire. The others are, I don't know, still huddled in their corners. I'm going to finish writing this and head out. It all started with Ed and this drink he brought. He wouldn't tell anyone where or how he got that thing. The only thing he said is that he had tried it before and that it was a strong one. Edmund Meltzer was a weird fucking dude. He loved occult stuff. Like for real. He has all these books and artifacts at his condominium. He was really into that shit. We all knew he was a weird man, but we've also known for a long time that he's harmless. Well, to the people he likes at the very least. All of us knew Ed's not going to poison us, so we didn't question his secrecy about the alcohol. Much. Oh yeah, as a side note, I'm not mentioning any names here because I don't want the guys to get into any more trouble. If we're getting entangled with the law, they'll check our phones. Anyway, we're all part of this WhatsApp group. That's how you know who was here. Anyway, after sniffing the contents of the bottle, we've all concluded it must be some honeyed something. Like honeyed wine, I guess. Yeah, it didn't have any labels on it. It was strong, really strong. Even the best drinkers would feel the effects of this alcohol after a shot or two. The thing was strangely pleasant on the taste buds, like a soda, one that made you lightheaded and very agreeable. Ed warned us about not going too far with that spirit. He said, if you drink too much, you'll feel like you're experiencing a cocaine overdose. That basically means your body will feel as if you're being roasted alive, while your breathing turns hectic and shallow. Not to mention that your muscles will feel like they're about to be torn off your bones. Of course, we all said we'd be careful with the damned thing. That all flew out of our heads once the liquid finally had gotten to our heads. So, after getting drunk on some mystery booze, that bastard, Edmund suggested we try one of his crazy rituals. With all semblance of sense out of the window, we've agreed. Obviously, this time, we demanded to know what he'd have us take part in. Some absurd, mystical crap that had to do with a corpse he apparently had dug out and kept in this shack. It's like a summer farm his parents used to own or something. I still don't really remember the details. Somehow, probably because of that drink, we all found the idea funny. It became even funnier when he said he'd do this thing to summon some sort of being. I can't remember the term he used to describe it. Something that has to do with other dimensions or some sort of, for the hell with this. I can't remember the phrasing. It's not the first time he attempted something practical with his occult stuff. He attempted to get his hands on the writings of Judah Liu, the rabbi that created the Golem of Prague, allegedly. We agreed to his hideous plot and drove here in a drunken state. I have no idea how we didn't end up killing ourselves. The levels of stupidity kept on escalating from there. Once we've arrived there, Ed had us help him get the corpse out of the barn. God damn this man, he must have gotten a fresh one. It smelled like spoiled eggs and pus. Jesus, that smell will probably never leave my mind. I was drunk out of my ass, but the smell was still bad enough to end up etched into my memory. I have no clue how we even managed to get the corpse in place. That is, without totally obliterating it, given the fact we were all swaying, bumbling fools, trying our damnedest to not drop the foul body bag. Ed had us place the body bag against a pole not far from the shack, and we had to tie it up standing upright. After that, he drew some crazy symbol around it. No bloody idea what it was supposed to be. I'll try to recreate the symbol to go with this note. It looked like Something of an 8 and the sign of infinity crossed by one another with 2 diagonal H's on top of it all. He encircled all of this with a simple line. Ed made this symbol with some sort of powder. For the life of me, I've no clue what it was, didn't even occur to me to bother asking. We were all just looking at him do his thing. After which he set the corpse on fire and started chanting something in what I think he later explained to be a Celtic language. Obviously none of that had worked and nothing came of it. Nothing but the foul smell of a burning human carcass. Great stuff. We just all laughed it off. Ed at first seemed a little disappointed. Well, nah, actually. It really pissed him off. He started rambling about how it must have failed because he drew the sign wrong because of his drunkenness. We paid his dribble no mind and tried cheering him up instead. This led to us drinking more of that poison. We all had a great time afterward, that is, until I've drunk a little too much of the sweetened liquor. At some point, I've started feeling sick from the drinking. Not your usual alcohol sick, I was getting all dizzy and my stomach was beginning to hurt. Well, maybe that's a little like typical drunk sickness. This one had a symptom I've experienced for the first time, though. I felt like I needed to go, but couldn't. Soon there was a conjoined feeling of extreme nausea and constipation at the same time. Hell, I was getting seasick inside that shack, so I made my way out to breathe some fresh air. With each step I took, I felt as if the room around me was about to turn upside down. It was awful. I can, in fact, feel myself getting nauseous just thinking about it now. The guys stared at me funny as I made my way out. I was probably walking ridiculously slowly. Ed made some remark, but I couldn't quite hear it. Once outside, I felt the cold night breeze hitting my face. I was sure I would be hurling the contents of my stomach all over my shoes in a second. What came instead were chills, awful chills. My body was freezing out there. I was getting so cold I couldn't even breathe straight. I was literally grasping for some flammable oxygen with my mouth. I let myself slump down to my backside as I leaned against a wall. Trying to steady my breaths to no avail, the chills gradually turned into a smouldering sensation of internal heat. So much heat, oh God. I was burning. I thought I'm going to combust. I felt as if my blood was truly boiling in my veins. Everything became so hot, so painful. I couldn't even keep my eyes open. Everything around felt so hot. I couldn't breathe. I remember falling to my side with a surge of pain coursing through my entire body. That's when the spasms came. My body was tearing itself apart. Pop after pop, the feeling of each and every single muscle contracting violently took over my mind, drowning me in a sea of indescribable pain. I was sure I was about to die. I wanted to die. Everything was better than this ungodly pain. I tried screaming, but all that came were muffled moans. I'm still sore, but right now it's more like the aftermath of a good massage. So, as I lay there broken and begging to be put out of my misery, the boys are still partying, completely unaware of how bad they're going to feel in a few hours. That beverage is a sick, sick invention. I was pretty sure I'm getting delirious when I saw a massive, oddly shaped shadow approach the shack from the distance. I couldn't even think straight at this point, let alone rationalize or react to what I was seeing. I was basically paralyzed inside of my convulsing and self-immolating body. The closer the shadow got to me, the better I could make out its details. The ugly bastard looked like some sort of leathery centaur thing at first. By the time it was close enough for me to hear the beating of hooves against the ground, I was drifting between the realms of the conscious and unconscious. Everything from that point onward came in the form of bright visual flashes. Once the monstrosity was a few meters away from the shack, I could see it had 3 horns on its head. I could also see that it was most definitely a sort of chimeric thing. My eyes closed themselves shut for a moment, and the beast was right next to me the next time they had opened. It had a snake for a tail, a living, breathing snake, hissing and all. Everything turned black again, and once my eyes shot open again, I saw it in all of its glory. It had multiple eyes all over its humanoid half. It was breathing deeply. My eyes went shut once more, but I could hear the sound of fire, like a flamethrower. Screaming from inside the shack followed, and I blacked out. The next time my eyes opened, I saw the charred corpse of Edmund Meltzer standing over me. I tried reaching out. I tried saying something, but my body was still locked in its own little alcohol-induced hell. Ed didn't seem like he should be able to stand or do anything, really. He didn't look like he should be in one piece. He looked like a dead person. The weirdest part is that I wasn't even afraid or anything like that. I was almost elated, almost experiencing orgasmic euphoria. My body was in so much goddamned pain, it was starting to give me paradoxical feelings. In a moment of clarity, I rationalized I was about to bite the dust and end up dead. I just took myself for a delirious drunkard who was nearing his expiration moment. At that point, that seemed like the better option, to be frank. I can't even begin to explain just how bloody miserable I had been at that point. It was quite literally hell on earth. The last thing I remember seeing before I blacked out for the night was Ed staggering his way out. If you could call that staggering. It was like his legs were being dragged behind him. There were constant breaks to his gait every few inches because his bones would get dislocated by his motions. It smelled of burnt flesh all over, and every movement he made emitted a crackling sound that isn't even meant to come out of a human body. After he walked past me, I felt myself drifting out of consciousness once more. I had been relieved, thinking it was the end. Then it all went black for me. Turns out I woke up in the morning, feeling a little sore and pretty hungover. Surprisingly, I was mostly fine. My body wasn't damaged beyond repair somehow. Obviously, getting back to my feet was a little rough because I was so bombed, but nonetheless I managed to stand up. Now here comes the craziest part of it all. The first thing I noticed was that my car was standing in the distance. There we go, yes. Odd, I thought to myself. The idea that we'd drive my car to Ed's property as part of his idea felt incredibly weird. So much so that I felt something was off, really off. Turning around, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. The shack, it wasn't burnt, it was rotten and partially covered in wild flora. My insides twisted and turned, not from the alcohol, but rather from something else. All of this had to be wrong. I rubbed my face and made my way into the shack. It was a hellhole. A total mess resulted from years of negligence. The boys were asleep. They seemed totally fine. That wasn't right. That definitely wasn't right. The gears in my head started turning. I fumbled in my pocket for my phone. I had to check something out. As I pulled it out, a receipt fell out. I picked it up. It was from a liquor store. It listed a single item, Nergal's Eupnia, 2 bottles of that. Fucking hell. It all started playing out in my head all over again. I got the bottles of this snake's venom. I got the guys back together. We drank that thing and we finished one of the bottles. We were out of our heads when we started drinking the second one. Ed, my God, he was there, out of nowhere, and nobody even noticed. That thing, that awful drink, it made us all experience a collective hallucination. Ed's dead. He's been dead for years now. He died in a construction accident. God, This was a corrupted recreation of our final day together. We ended up shooting fireworks. That drink, that poisonous liquid, it made us all recreate our final day together through a corrupting lens of an alcohol-induced mass delusion. For the love of God, do not ever drink or buy this toxin. Don't you ever drink Nergal's Eupnea. "3 months ago, one of my best friends, Tommy, died. It was a suicide. Very unlike him, though. What do I know? Maybe I wasn't the only one who got fucked up during our service. He mentioned a few times he drew whatever haunted his nightmares. I have no idea how often he drew for this reason. He used to draw a lot in general, mostly positive stuff. He was pretty damn good at it, too. I remember we used to joke about how he should have become a comic book illustrator because of his style of drawing and his skill with the pen. Tommy was a positive man. You could never tell something was wrong with him. Other than the usual stuff everyone goes through. Life's never only about the ups. Obviously there are downs too. Then again, more often than not, you wouldn't be able to tell if a person's dealing with demons or not unless they were open about it. Tom went out in the worst way imaginable. It wasn't like him. Wasn't like him at all. He apparently sliced his arms open and bled out, to put it simply. It wasn't that simple. However, I'd imagine. When I was told I could come by his place and pick out whatever I'd like to take with me as a memento, I was told I'd better stay out of his room. For my own sake. I wasn't sure how to feel about that statement when I first heard it. Cassie, his sister, she was the one who told me I should keep out of there. She called it hell. When I came by 2 weeks after Tom's passing, I made it a point to check out his room. It was like this itch that I couldn't scratch. I had to see what he left behind. I had to know what all the fuss was about. There's no way it was as bad as Cassie was saying, right? These were the words of a grieving sister. I thought there was no way it would be too bad. Just a few bloodstains here and there, and a massive pool of the dried-up crimson liquid somewhere. I've seen worse. I've done worse. Hoo boy, how fucking wrong I was. Quite frankly, Cassandra wasn't exaggerating, not in the slightest. The room was a total mess, I'll say this much. I've never thought there'd be so much in a single human being. Thomas wasn't even the biggest of guys. He was pretty average, in terms of his overall volume, I guess I could say. There was blood everywhere. It was all over the floor, on the walls, on his desk, staining his bedsheets. The worst part was, there were words written in blood all over the room. I couldn't decipher them, which is probably for the better. No, I'm lying. That's not the worst part. Even the smell wasn't the worst part of it. I guess if the whole place didn't make me feel so on edge, I'd find the stench incredibly sickening. The whole room reeked of a mix of rotten flesh, eggs, and stinging touches of iron. Probably the worst thing I've ever smelled, but it wasn't what bothered me the most. Somehow, for some reason, the moment I stepped through the front door, I felt myself tense up. I thought it was just the mood of it all. Being inside the house of someone you knew that ended up offing themselves. It wasn't that. Grief and a moody atmosphere do not make you feel you're being watched. Yeah, I felt like I was being watched the whole time I was there. That's probably the reason I made sure I thoroughly checked out every last inch of the house, just to make sure there was no one in there. I guess old habits die hard. The whole place felt as if it was out of this world, in a sense that there was no time. No flow, like it was thrown out of reality and set in a dark corner of its own, like it was stuck in its own sort of dimension, forsaken by any higher power that might exist. It felt heavy in there, physically heavy. Like someone or something turned up the gravitational forces inside that estate. I felt as if I was being crushed by the apartment itself, like it was alive, like it didn't want me there. I couldn't leave, though, not until I'd seen Tommy's room. I had to see what happened. I suppose it was some sense of morbid curiosity. I'd say the animalistic part inside of me was trying to mess with my civilized part. Maybe the devil on my shoulder tried to one-up the angel on my other shoulder. I think I just wanted to see what the death of one of my best friends looked like. Maybe somewhere deep inside, I wanted to pay him my final respects like that. I don't know. Anyway, I made it to his room, hardly. The apartment was sucking the life out of me. I found myself stopping and staring at a wall in every wall. It's like I was waiting for something to crawl out and come at me. I might have been hoping for something like that. I guess it'd be easier to accept Tom's death if it came at the hands of some monster as opposed to his own. Grief is a fucked up thing. Thomas's room was truly hell. However, there was blood everywhere. It was all over the floor, on the walls, on his desk, staining his bed sheets. So much blood. I was afraid. I could feel my heart trying to escape my cage with anxiety. I was having another fit. I needed a moment. I knew it was just another fit. I haven't been good with stress these last few years. I know I've a problem, and well, I can't fix it just yet. I refuse to dig deep inside the pit that is my soul and pull out all the shit to the surface and deal with it as I should. I just can't. I had to sit down and give myself a moment of respite. I ended up sitting down on Tommy's bed, and for a moment, I thought I could see him standing next to his desk, next to a covered canvas. I was sure for about a second. I saw my friend standing there, talking to me. My mind went blank for a moment. It wasn't a hallucination or anything of that sort. I was just trying to deal with the loss, my mind making up bullshit to cope better. Shh. It hurt so much. I felt the tears roll down my cheeks. I felt kind of good for about a millisecond. Then a knock came from the window. It quite literally made me jump. I have been so zoned out, a soft knock on the window jolted me upright. I could feel my muscles petrify with tension. I turned towards the window facing me from across the room, and I was sure I'm going to piss myself. She was just standing there, knocking on the window while staring at me. From the inside, seeing her felt like taking a knife to the chest. She just stood there, knocking gently and smiling. That fucking smile. That wasn't a human smile. Too wide, way too wide. And her eyes, aloof, dead empty, yet so sharp, like daggers. I felt as if she was digging at my insides with her eyes. I just stood there, frozen, like a scared child. I had every right to be a scared child at that moment. She seemed so real and yet almost ethereal. And no, she wasn't transparent or anything. Solid. She was solid. I could see the withering of the edges of her cloak. It's like it was made up of pitch-black tentacles. I couldn't even utter a sound in her presence. She just pointed her finger at the covered canvas, and I involuntarily shifted my gaze towards it. My body moved on its own, ignoring my internal screams. As I looked at it, the cover slipped down and fell to the floor, revealing a drawing, a crude representation of hers, drawn in a disgusting reddish-brown, nearly black color. I was mesmerized by the artistic abomination. My eyes were locked on that thing. Suddenly, the knocking stopped, and the uneasiness began to wash away. I turned back to the window, and the bitch was gone. I was alone again, not willing to risk it. I grabbed the canvas and bolted out of the estate. I had no idea why I took the damn thing. I just did. It's like something inside snapped, and I knew I had to take it with me. A sort of primal call or something, I don't know. I was pretty sure I had a fit, so bad I was hallucinating, but no, the painting is real. It's still disgusting to look at from a distance. I feel like I'm being punched in the guts if I look at it for longer than a few seconds. Can't even stand close to that thing. It makes me sick to my stomach because of the awful smell. I've an awful idea of what it's made of. The dye, that is. I would rather not think about it. I really hope I'm wrong about this thing, but I'm pretty sure I'm losing my mind ever since I've gotten this thing. I can keep hearing someone walking around the house when I'm alone. Heck, I've even seen my dog randomly wiggling her tail as if someone's approaching her when there's no one there. I keep hearing someone audibly breathe from time to time. I live alone. I keep having nightmares about people opening themselves up and using their own blood to paint all these awful images of indescribable terrors. I don't even want to think about that shit. I even woke up the other night seeing something stand in the corner of my room. It was this short, rather humanoid shadow, but it was withering at the edges. I couldn't move. I was frozen with fear. I was fully awake, seated up, facing that shadow thing. I think it noticed me, and then expanded itself. I was sure I'm having another nightmare, but then the thing enveloped my whole bedroom. For a quick moment, everything turned black, and I felt a wave of frozen air rush through me. I was drowning in the cold sensation. I couldn't breathe. My lungs just froze. A second later, everything returned to normal. Couldn't sleep for the rest of that night, or the following night. I'm always on edge. Anxious more often than not. Everyone around me thinks I'm losing it. They're probably right. I feel like there's a crushing atmospheric force trying to crack my fucking body open whenever I step into the garage where the bloody canvas stands. Everything started with that thing. I've to get rid of it. I think I'm going to throw the bloody canvas. I'm going to get rid of that thing once the feeling of someone standing behind me goes away. I saw it. I saw it. I swear I saw it. It's real, oh God, it's real. I know it is. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. It was definitely the real deal. No way it was something else. It was that, yeah, it had to be. It couldn't be anything else. There's no way, no, it had to be that. I didn't really see it, but then again, that's expected. I'm dealing with a stealthy predator here after all. I saw the wingspan, however, the shadow of its wings. Massive. Way bigger than I expected. I thought it would be the size of a dog, maybe a bit bigger. Boy, was I wrong. Judging by the size of that shadow I saw, it's probably the size of a cow, if not bigger. This thing's huge. The most important thing, though, is that I know for sure it's real. It's no longer a cryptid. It's an animal, and I'll have its gargantuan body. I'm not sure where I will store the damned thing considering its massive size, but I will have it taxidermied one way or another. Maybe I could put it in my garage or something. I'll think of something. First things first, I need to find a way to overcome the fact that this thing is an obvious super predator. Lifting a grown man like that is something I didn't expect it to be able to do. Honestly, probably the most awe-inspiring thing I've seen in my entire life, probably also the most horrifying as well. The sound that this man let out before the raptor snapped his neck was truly blood-chilling. I froze when I heard that choked shriek escaping his throat. I'm fairly certain it was reflexive, probably as a result of the claws of the mega-bird sinking into his upper body. Humans are not meant to be able to let out such terrible sounds. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I've got to reorganize my thoughts. Well, tonight started with me going on a walk on the mountainside, on top of which sits Lo's lair. Ha, lair. Yes. It fits his name, Lo, lion. Yatim, lion. Now that I think of it, it's kind of weird that a man whose last name is German for lion lives in relative seclusion on a mountain in Washington of all places. Not to mention, has some obsession with birds. Then again, cats prey on birds whenever they can. I've heard that lions hunt birds as snacks from time to time, not sure if that's true or not, but sounds fairly plausible. Not to mention his obsession being the reason we're so close. I am just as obsessed with birds as he is. God, I'm so disorganized right now. I'm still somewhat shaking. It's been a while since I've been this excited. Though I have a reason to be dancing with joy now. I know that my research was not in vain. I can say with the utmost of certainties that the super owl exists, and it's here. It's real. It is very much so. Holy. It's real. It's monstrous. It could eat me. I don't know. I don't know if I can. I'm not really sure I should do this. Jesus. That thing was bloody massive. Birds shouldn't be this tall. What if it's not an owl? What if it's some type of reptile? A dragon, perhaps? A remnant from the Jurassic period, still living out there, mocking our presumed understanding of the current state of nature? No, it has to be an owl. Nothing can fly, emitting no sound, nothing but owls. Yes, only owls are like that. It's definitely an owl. What if it's a god? One shaped like an owl. An owl god, yes, that could be it. Some sort of ancient mountain deity patrolling its turf, and I was lucky enough to witness it. No, get a hold of yourself. It was an animal. It can only be an animal. For Christ's sake, there's nothing supernatural about this bird. It's just a massive bird, one we have yet to discover officially. It makes sense, after all. We've only observed giant and colossal squids fairly recently, and the legends about those sea giants were around for the longest time. I've discovered it, though. I've seen the bird. Yes. Now all I need is some physical evidence. I've got to get some samples from the animal, some dung. Maybe a feather. A feather would be nice. Bloody hell, I'm rambling again. Okay, enough. Enough rambling. Honestly, I don't even feel bad for the guy the owl god took. I think I might call it that. Sounds somewhat appropriate. Anyway, I knew there was something familiar about this man's wife. Now it clicked. There was a story of them sexually abusing teenage girls in the news. I guess that serves him right. Serves both of them right. I'm fairly certain she will live in fear now. It fits almost, I'd say. A force of nature, a god, an owl god dished out some vengeance on those who hurt the innocent. I can't help but smile at the notion I've seen this elusive beast. I have to stop rambling. I took a walk through the woods tonight, wasn't planning on taking anything down. I've already gotten myself a great grey owl. Almost finished stuffing it too. It's a beauty. I wasn't even looking for the super owl. I was just out there looking at owls. I enjoy looking at them. It's like they're some sort of alien entity. They hear something. They lock their heads on the target. They follow it, in deathly silent aerial maneuvering, and then they strike, once close enough. One blow from an owl, and the prey is done for. If the target moves, the owl repositions its body, while the head remains fixed in place. I was in the middle of observing that when I heard a woman crying for help. Immediately my attention was diverted from the raptor. I took off my night vision goggles and called out back to her. She came running to me, clearly distressed. I couldn't even understand what she was saying for about 2 minutes because of how rushed and jumbled her speech was. It took me a while, but eventually I figured it out. Her husband was trying to fight off some predator that was stalking them. Quote-unquote predator because she claimed they were sure it was a person. She mentioned hearing something akin to a very loud and long O sound, almost like a muffled bass-filled moan. It was probably the hooting of the owl god. Big bird, loud vocalizations. It didn't sound right to me, so I decided to follow her and see if I could help her husband. I'm glad I didn't recognize her face at the time, otherwise I would have flipped her the bird and carried on my casual observations, missing my most important sighting in the process. Anyway, as we were walking through the increasingly thickening forest, she just kept on rambling about how much she was worried about her husband getting hurt. I kept on trying to reassure her that everything would be all right, but I guess she's the type of person who is simply annoying like that. For some reason, she didn't think she should mention the fact her husband has a gun until we were deep in the forest. Not the sharpest tool in the shed, I suppose. Just as she mentioned the gun, the cracking explosion of a bullet leaving a barrel boomed through the forest to my left. Instinctively, my body shifted gears. I told her to follow my lead and began running toward the explosive noise. Another shot went off, and another one. The woman she was struggling behind me must have gotten stuck in some of the roots I jumped over. I just pushed forward. Edging a clearing, I heard it. The blood-cementing sounds emitted by an unfortunate proverbial mouse caught in the talons of a literal monster raptor. I froze in my tracks, and my heart pounded at what felt like 500 beats per minute. Everything seemed to slow down to an excruciating crawl. I was trying to process everything while the moonlight illuminated the surrounding forest in a glistening silver tint. The owl god didn't give me nearly enough time to make sense of everything that had just happened as it flew over me. Its massive figure obscured the moon, and for a millisecond, the surrounding environment turned pitch black. I looked up. There it was, a massive figure with illogically large wings. Completely silent. I stood there, frozen in place by amazement and terror. Something limp hung from beneath the anomaly's form, a human shape. The sight broke me out of my trance, and I ran, forgetting everything. I ran as fast as I could. I ran leaving that woman alone. I don't regret it. Hell, I forgot about her being there until I got back to Lowe's place. I didn't run out of fear. I ran in a fit of mania because I knew I had finally gotten to see the legendary avian I was looking for.